In this Cricut tutorial, I am showing you a hack that will allow you to quickly and easily make humongous cuts with your Cricut cutting machine. So let's get crafty. Hey, I'm Michael from the Mr. Crafty Pants YouTube channel, where I show you the best ways to use your Cricut cutting machine every single week. But today, I'm actually over here on the Design Bundles YouTube channel because we have partnered up to bring you all another Cricut tutorial. So be sure that you all stay tuned until the very end of today's episode because y'all do not want to miss out on a single Cricut minute. I promise you that, especially today. I am so excited for today's episode because, well, I'm actually moving soon. And whenever I go to move, I like to make sure that everything is clean, everything is organized, and I also like to make sure that the house that I'm moving into is nicely decorated, right? And so in preparation for that, I've been doing some online shopping, and let me just say that on more than one occasion, I have caught myself saying, well, shoot, I can make that. And this is just one of those examples right here on Amazon.com. It is this "You Will Forever Be My Always," this wall art, this sign right here, which is absolutely gorgeous. I love this, but it's also $149. And let me just say that I took this as a personal challenge. I actually found this sign right here from Hobby Lobby. This thing is humongous, like absolutely ridiculously huge. Now, here's the thing. This sign is normally 40 bucks, but pretty often they actually do a 40% off sale on this particular line. And so I actually got this for $26. And so with this and a few other little items like a Cricut cutting machine and some StarCraft HD permanent adhesive vinyl, well, we're gonna make some Cricut magic happen and save a whole lot of money in the process. So let's hop over now to designbundles.net and I'm gonna show you the SVG cut file I'm using to make all this happen. All right, so here is that file right here, which looks very, very similar. It's not a dead app replica, but it's very similar. And take a look right now at the price. So it's normally $5, which that alone is a great price, but it's currently on sale for $2.75. Now, y'all, I cannot make any promises of what that price is gonna be by the time that you watch this video and go check it out for yourselves. But even if you catch it at $5, it's still a really, really great price. So let's hop over now to Cricut Design Space and let's get started creating this. All right, so as you can see here, I have already downloaded this file from designbundles.net and actually uploaded it into Cricut Design Space. Now, the first thing I want to do is actually resize this to fit onto a sign this size right here. Now, I've already taken down the measurements of the sign and it is 47 inches by 22 3/4 of an inch. So to actually resize this, I'm going to create a template to be that exact same dimensions. So to do that, I'm coming over here to the left-hand side of the page and clicking on Shapes. All right, so we're actually going to turn this into our template. So first things first, let's come up here towards the top of the canvas where it says size. And I'm actually going to unlock this little padlock because, well, that padlock is locking in the proportions of whatever image or shape that it is selected. So we want to make sure that we unlock that so that we can have a different measurement for the width versus the height. Now for that width, I'm going to put in here 47 and hit enter for 47 inches. And for that height, I'm going to put in here 22.75 for 22 3/4 of an inch. Now, obviously this is a little bit too big for our screen, so I'm gonna come down here towards the bottom left-hand side of the page and just zoom out. Just like so. Now, if you want to get a better idea of what this is going to look like once it's all said and done, we could also come up here towards the top left-hand side of the page and change the color of the template to white or to whatever color of the surface that you're applying your design to. There we go. All right, so as you can see here, our design is kind of stuck behind our template. So I'm actually going to right click our template and then select Send to Back. There we go. So what we can do now is basically resize our design to fit appropriately onto our sign. So to do that, I'm going to grab this little resize handle right here at the bottom right hand side of the page and then just drag this outwards like so. All right, so I'm thinking that that size is gonna be perfect for our sign. So we don't really need our template any longer. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on that and then click this little red X up here just to delete that out. And now let's take a look over here at the right-hand side of the page in this layers panel. So this design is actually split up into a few different layers, right? We have the portion that says be my, we have this portion right here that says you will, with the portion that says always, and we also have this portion right here that says forever. Now what I'm wanting to do is make sure that this is all just one solid layer, one solid image. And to do that, what I'm gonna do is make sure that this is all selected, just like that. And then I'm gonna come down here towards the bottom right-hand side of the page and click weld. And weld essentially does what it sounds like it's gonna do. It's gonna weld, or it's gonna fuse all those layers into one solid image or one solid layer. Now, since it is now just one solid layer, we can now slice this up or split it up to fit onto our cutting mats. Now, I'll actually be cutting this out on this 12" by 24" cutting mat right here. Now, although this is a 12" by 24" cutting mat, the maximum cutting size on this is 11.5 inches by 23.5 inches. Now, if you don't have one of these cutting mats, don't feel obligated that you have to actually go and buy one of these. You could actually do the same exact project with a 12" by 12" cutting mat like this guy right here, with the maximum cutting size being 11.5 inches by 11.5 inches. Now to properly slice up this design, what we're going to have to do is create a template of sorts of our cutting mat. So to do that, I'm coming over here to the left-hand side of the page and clicking on shapes, and I'm going to open up another square. All right, so I'm going to come back up here towards the top of the canvas, right up here where it says size, and we are again going to unlock that padlock. And for my width, I'm going to put in here 11.5, and for my height, I'm going to put in here 23.5. Because again, remember, that is the maximum cutting size of the mat that we're using today. Now, if you are using the 12" by 12" cutting mat, instead you would actually make your dimensions 11.5 inches by 11.5 inches, since that is the maximum cutting size for this mat. So basically what we need to do now is make sure that we have enough of these mats to cover up our design. So I'm actually going to right click our template of a mat and select duplicate, just like so. And then just line it up like so. I'm going to duplicate it again. All right, so it looks like we're going to have to cut out this design onto 3 different mats. Now again, if you're going to cut out your design on this cutting mat right here, you'd basically have to cut this out 6 times. All right, so what I'm going to do now is right click this mat and then select send to back. Same with this one and same with this one. There we go. All right, so basically this is just showing us exactly how our design is going to be split up onto the 3 different mats, okay? So I'm actually going to come down here towards the bottom left-hand side of the page and zoom in a little bit, because I want to make sure that these mats are as close together as possible, but without overlapping or without there being any space in between either. All right, so there we go. That looks pretty good. All right, so what we're going to do now is actually slice up our design to fit onto each of these 3 cutting mats. Now, whenever you go to slice, it will only work if you have 2 layers selected. You won't have the option to slice if you have 1 layer selected, and you will not have the option to slice if you have 3 layers or more selected. So what I'm going to do is make sure that our design is selected. And again, we welded it all together, so this is just one solid layer like it is right here. Now, as far as one of our cutting mat templates, that is another layer. So I'm going to hold down my shift key, and I'm going to select the mat behind it, like so. And what I'm going to do now is come down here towards the bottom right-hand side of the page and click on slice. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to actually click on our design right here in the middle. Then holding on my shift key, I'm going to select the cutting mat template behind it. And then come down here towards the bottom right-hand side of the page and click on slice. And just by the process of elimination, this last layer right here is already sliced out for us. So there we go. We can go ahead and delete that out. We can move this section over here and this section over here. And then all this gray area right here is basically just garbage. It's just remnants of where we sliced everything out. So here is our design that is now going to fit perfectly onto our cutting mats. All right, so what I'm going to do now is come up here towards the top right-hand side of the page and click on Make It. And as we can see here, here's our design set up onto the 3 mats, just like so. All right, so I'm going to come down here towards the bottom right-hand side of the page and click on Continue. Now, as far as permanent adhesive vinyl, I'm actually using my go-to, which is the StarCraft HD Permanent Adhesive Vinyl. Now, the HD stands for high durability, and this is honestly the best permanent adhesive vinyl that I have ever ever used. I love that all of the colors come in both a matte and glossy finish. I love that it's super easy to cut, super easy to weed. I also love that it's so affordable. You can get a 12-inch by 5-foot roll of this for $2.85. There's also a promo code that you can use, and I'll make sure that the link for this as well as the promo code is down in that description box below. But if you have not yet tried this, you're so missing out. But as far as the cut settings for this goes, I personally like to use the premium vinyl cut setting. And to find that, I come over here and select Browse All Materials. Now, if you are using a Cricut Explorer device, make sure that your dial is turned over to custom, and then you should have all these same exact options. But I'm gonna select Browse All Materials, and then I'm gonna do a search for premium. And then I'm just gonna select premium vinyl, and then select done. And there we go. So now all I have to do is actually load this onto our cutting mats and get started cutting. All right, so as far as actually removing my material from my cutting mat, what I always like to do is flip my mat over and then peel my mat away from my material, or in this case vinyl, instead of the other way around, just to help prevent any damage from occurring to our material. And while that cuts out, I'm gonna go ahead and trim out my design and start weeding it all out. All right, so here is our design, but just split up into 3 different sections. So what we need to do now is actually transfer this over to our wooden sign. Now, contrary to popular belief, whenever you are applying a permanent adhesive vinyl to a wooden surface, you do not need to seal over top of that permanent vinyl once it's on top of that wooden sign. What you do need to do, however, though, is actually prep that wooden surface before you apply the permanent vinyl to it. Now, the rule of thumb whenever it comes to permanent vinyl is that the smoother, the shinier, and the cleaner the surface, the better that permanent adhesive vinyl will actually adhere to it. So obviously you want to make sure that the wooden surface is sanded down super smooth, but you also want to make sure that you seal it with a sealant that at least has somewhat of a shine to it. Now, it may just be personal preference, but I'm not a huge fan on super glossy wooden signs. What I like, however, is more on the matte side. However, I met somewhere in the middle and actually did a sealant with a satin finish. I actually used the Crystal Brite tone in the satin finish. I actually did 2 coats of that onto the wooden sign, and that's actually perfectly prepped and prepared now for our permanent adhesive vinyl. So what I'm going to do now is just grab my medium tack transfer tape. This stuff is like the gold standard in my opinion, in my book. Love this stuff. So I'm just going to use this to apply this over to our wooden sign. I'm also going to be using some parchment paper. Now that may sound crazy, you may be wondering, well, what the heck are you doing with parchment paper? Well, if you've never seen this little hack yet, it is going to completely change the Cricut game for you guys. I promise you that. Not only does it make it super easy to layer permanent adhesive vinyl, but it also makes it super easy to make sure that your vinyl is lined up exactly where you want it to be on your surface before you actually commit to adhering it. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab our sign and we'll get started. All right, so what I'm wanting to do is actually start with our center piece right here. I wanna make sure that it is perfectly lined up and perfectly center. And then once this is adhered, then we can work on these side pieces right over here. So I'm actually gonna grab some transfer tape, just to make sure that we have enough for this particular piece of design. And I'm just gonna trim this off. And then I'm just gonna apply this to our vinyl. I'm gonna grab a little squeegee right here and then just burnish this down. And then we'll flip this over and then peel the backing paper off of the vinyl and off of the transfer tape. All right, so here is our transfer tape with the design now on it. Now, one thing I do not want to do is flip this over and then prematurely have it adhere down to our wooden surface. So what I'm actually going to do is pull off some of this parchment paper like so. It doesn't have to cover up the entire design, but just most of it will do the trick. And we can flip this over. And that parchment paper is actually acting as a barrier between our vinyl and our surface. I can even grab our designs from over here and just kind of place them to where they're going to be, just to make sure that everything is laid out exactly the way it should be. All right, so I'm pretty sure that that's exactly where I want it to be. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab my little squeegee tool, like so, and then just burnish down the top portion of this transfer tape or of this vinyl, the part that does not have the parchment paper directly underneath of it. All right, so once that is actually burnished down to our wooden surface, you can go ahead and pick up the rest of your design, just like so. You can pull out the parchment paper, and then you can grab your squeegee again, and then just slowly burnish this down as you apply it down to the wooden side. All right, so now once that is actually adhered down to the wooden surface, very carefully grab a corner of your transfer tape and then slowly peel that off. And now we're just going to repeat that exact same process for the other pieces. And now we're just going to carefully line this up with our other pieces. Alright, so now we're just going to burnish down this top section. Then lift up our transfer tape and pull out the parchment paper. We are then just going to burnish this down. And then just slowly peel off the transfer tape. Now, if you all liked today's episode, or if you learned something new, it would honestly mean the world to us and help us out so much here on YouTube if you took just 2 seconds to stamp that like button, as well as drop a comment down in the comment section below. Also, while you're at it, if you are new around here to the Design Bundles YouTube channel, well then you may want to consider stamping that subscribe button and ringing that little bell for all the notifications, because y'all, I'm not even joking, they put out new crafty content nearly every single day, and y'all do not want to miss out on a single crafty minute. Thank you all so much for watching today's episode. It truly does mean the absolute world to us, and until next time, stay crafty.